Alright guys, I looked high and low in 3 different books and I cannot find the torque specs for these. Closest I can figure is 15 foot-pounds. And so we're going to start there. And if I find something else, I'm going to go look in my M37 manuals tonight because they're I've got the Canadian manual and the American manual, and they're very specific, so it might tell us. But I'm just going to put this to 15 foot-pounds right now. Seems awfully low. I'm barely even registering here. There's 10, 15. 15, that seems like the lock washers are compressed, but we don't want to have a chance of these coming undone. So before I put that timing cover on, I'm going to go and check this, and we'll come back and re-torque those again if I find a different specification. But I would think 25 foot-pounds would be appropriate. Now the other thing I wanted to mention was that if you look at our timing marks, they're lined up. Got a little bit of slack in the chain right now, but these are in the right spots. Now if you really want to check this, you know, you could turn this engine all the way over and then bring it back and see if you're a tooth off or something, but I don't think we are because I set this without the chain on. So we should be in good shape there, and once I find that torque spec, we'll be ready to move on. And then like I say, we've got to put on our belt washer, which was the culprit last time and screwing this up. Just noticed a burr right there. Don't want that going down the engine. But that slinger should be able to just sit on there like this. This slinger was screwed up. It wouldn't go on the crank, and I had another one for my 265, which is the same thing, and it went right on there and just kind of dangles on there, and that's how they should be. And this one was all bent up and everything, so I went through and straightened it all out, hammered it flat, filed all the edges and the rough marks off of it, and then I went through and just clearanced this just ever so slightly with the Dremel and a file, and now this goes on perfectly. It won't get hung up on the crank. What does this mean for us? Well, it means we've fixed the problems that I believe caused the initial failure, and it's a good thing we stopped where we did, and it's a good thing that we started investigating, and it's a good thing that I screwed up in a way, because that felt made me suspicious, and it made me start paying more attention to what the possible problem was. So think about this. We'd only run the engine 4 hours. We always had oil pressure, and yes, we had the felt circulating around in there, but it didn't seem to block the oil flow like I had thought previously. And so it made me start paying attention and trying to correlate some things, and one of those things was, why do only number 5 and 6 have damage? Well, there's your answer. These things were stretching or something and hammering that crank on number 5 and 6 cylinder. None of the other journals had any damage. So the head is just set on, and I've got the thermostat housing on there, the gasket, thermostat's obviously in there, and then these bolts have been repainted, and this been repainted, and these got sealant on them on the threads so they can't seep. All the linkage is done. Timing set is in, and we're timed. The next thing we need to do is get this timing cover on. Okay, so we've put a little bit of sealant on, and we're going to put some assembly lube around this in a minute here. But our main goal here is to just seal this up a little bit. The book says to do this, so we've just got a light coat because this is all running in oil. So let's get this thrown on. It's probably not strictly necessary on this model, but I did this on my M37 and it uses the same hub, and I really haven't had any trouble with it. And worst case scenario, it'd fall apart on the outside, but I think it'll help us. So I had to kind of tap this hub on. This hub was kind of buggered up. There were some burrs turned up in it, so I had to clean that up and everything. And even still, it didn't want to go on. I hate having to hammer that on there, but this bolt isn't long enough, and there's no way you're going to screw that on there. So I can't torque this yet, obviously, because, you know, the engine's able to spin over so easily. Now we have virtually no compression right now because the head's not bolted down. But now we know that this timing cover's where it should be, so we can go ahead and tighten it. Alright, so we're going to go back and torque these. These are supposed to be 12 to 17 foot-pounds. So just go through and get these all tightened down. We'll make sure this is set up. And then we'll have to take off that crank bolt again, but that's no biggie. It really wasn't too hard to get that on there after I cleaned this up on the inside of that bore. I actually took a dingleberry hone through the inside to knock off any of the burrs, and you could see where all the metal had pushed up inside there. This time wasn't too bad, just had to tap it back, and then once I was able to get this threaded in there, it sucked it right back, no problem. So I think that's where we want to be with that. Alright, so I got this harmonic balancer and the pulley on here. I have not torqued this or put in the star washer yet because I wanted to get this fitted. And one of these bolts was starting to strip out. That's starting to sound like the theme on this engine is stripped bolts. So what I'm going to do is pull this all off, and then we'll go ahead and tighten this crank bolt down. I think it's 150 foot-pounds or something. I'll have to look in the book. But we're going to have to jam the motor in the back on the crankshaft because it turns over way before that. Right, so I put in all new bolts around here and changed these out for the other ones I had. These are zinc coated, and these ones are probably nitrided or something. But the one here was kind of stripping out, and I don't want it to do that. So we've got to make sure that these can come undone. The torque is 108, so that's the minimum. You can go a little over that, but the minimum is 108. Oop, there's 100. That felt good on my shoulder. Trying to read this torque wrench, and this thing's slipping off because of all the hub bolts. Okay, there it is. Okay, well I set this damper on 0 here, and then just confirmed my number 1 piston right at the top, so we should be good to go. So we can go ahead and throw the head on and start getting the oil pump and distributor on, but first I'm going to go ahead and get that stuff buckled down on the bottom of the engine and get the crossover tube and pickup tube and all that done. I've already cleaned all that stuff too, so we don't need to worry about that. And then I think I might put some paint on these numbers because they're really hard to see now. This is painted black. Alright, we've got our adapters back in here and a crossover tube and our pickup. I've gone through and cleaned all these, rinsed them again. We've got a new cotter key in here. And then I wanted to point out something that they mentioned in the book that might be something you'd miss if you didn't know it, if you're building one of these engines. And that is this tube here is supposed to be basically in a direct line with this main cap bolt right here. So it's not supposed to be flat, it's supposed to be just angled a little bit. And that's for oil pan clearance and all that. And then we've got our pickup here that is able to move, and that kind of floats in the oil. You want to make sure that that's in the correct spot in the notch. And beyond that, we're ready to throw the oil pan on. Now, I've got the oil pan sitting over here and I've got the end gaskets in. They tell you in the book, do not cut these. You can see how they stick up. That's because they're going to compress down. I would really rather have some sealant on here, but that's the way it's got to be done. I may put some in the ends and allow that to seal down there, but I don't know just yet. Alright, so I thought I'd show you a little bit about what I'm doing here while I'm doing it. So if you look at this notch here, you can just barely see the end of this little gasket sticking out right there. This notch goes around that, and what I'm going to do to hold this down, since this is conveniently flat and the engine's upside down right now, is I'm just going to put a little bit of sealant on the bottom side of the gasket to hold it in place. And then I'm going to put some around this so that it seals up good and we don't have a leak there. So if you can see how that goes in there. I'm not going to put sealant on this side just in case I need to take the oil pan down again for any reason. You know, if we have any weird noises or anything, because I'm paranoid now. All right, guys, we're torquing this last bolt. I'm doing these down to 25 foot-pounds. I didn't see a spec in the book, but I think 25 should do it. Working out from the center of the pan to the outside, and there it is. So we're all torqued evenly. Over here on the bench of wonders, we've got our oil pump. So this is soaking in oil. Let's bring it out here in the light. Watch me dump this. But what you're going to do is you're going to take this and spin it. And if you look close down in there, you can see that oil getting sucked in. So turn the rotor in there and look for bubbles to come up out of there. So you see a bubble there? That's what you don't want inside the pump, because if this pump isn't primed, then you might not be pushing any oil when you first start this up, and that's going to be a real bad day. So you submerge the entire thing like you're baptizing it, and then turn that rotor until you don't see any more air bubbles. All right, guys, we've got her all repainted. I had to do it in gloss this time because I'm out of paint, and I think gloss will look fine. But, you know, I don't want to have to take a trip down to the hardware store just to get some paint. It's a blowing blizzard out there, and I've got 4 cans of gloss sitting here. And this is just, it's not going to be perfect. It'd take me a month of Sundays to get this pan perfect, but, you know, it looks a lot better. And it should work for what we're doing here and protect the pan. So with that being said, we're going to let that dry. I'm going to turn on the heat in here and get this drying because it's fairly cool in the shop. And we'll come back at this tomorrow and get the oil pump and the distributor in, and then we'll move on to the head and oil pressure relief valve and all that stuff. All right, guys, I've got our oil pump in here. I've showed you how we got to do that, turn it to get all the bubbles out. I'm not going to tip this down because then I'm going to get covered in oil, but I'm just going to turn this a few more times. She's been sitting overnight. And then we're going to pull this out here and make a huge mess. So, all right, guys, this is going to be a big mess. I'm going to try and show you what I'm doing as I'm doing it, though. So this is why I didn't repaint this just yet, because it's going to be an oogie monster. All right, so what you're supposed to do in the book is turn this flat in here even with the bolt holes. So you turn it like that, and then back it off 1 turn. So since this is this way, I'm just going to look at something for reference here. And there's a line on the casting here. So backing it off 1 turn, we're going to turn it to clockwise direction. So about even with the back of this tooth here, and 1 tooth backward. Now I just put a little bit of RTV on this, not to seal it necessarily, but just so I haven't got to fool around with it. And now we can't turn this engine upside down or anything either, because we'll lose our prime in this oil pump. So this is going to drool, guaranteed. So I put a diaper down on the floor here. Alright, we got these in here, and then these bolts are unique bolts. You've got a slot in them, so just keep in mind. The machine shop was kind enough to take all my hardware out and throw it in a bag. I had specifically run these in here tight so that they wouldn't do that, but they did anyway, and now I've got some bolts that I don't know where they go. Now I'm just going to go down snug with these, and then I'm not sure what the torque is on these offhand, but we can look in the book and get a crow's foot on them. But snug is probably going to be sufficient on this. Alright guys, I turned this the wrong direction, so we've got to go counterclockwise 1 tooth here. So I just pulled this back out because we're off by 1 cylinder. So it would have been starting over, and it would have been on number 6 instead of 1. So we're going to take this, align that tooth with the casting on the back edge, and counterclockwise rotation. Okay, so I wanted to show you in the book when I'm talking about clockwise and counterclockwise. There's the diagrams in here that show you, and it also shows you that the distributor rotor should be pointing to the 7 o'clock position, and it wasn't. It was pointing what would have been the 8 o'clock position. It would have been to whatever the next wire was in the firing order. So let's get this put in here, and we're going to turn this 1 tooth backward. So 1 tooth backward, and then We'll pop her in there. And we don't want to bump this, because then we're going to be taking it out again. But these are pretty easy to take out, so no big deal. One thing that's kind of a pain is these bolts. You've got to basically have them all the way in first, because the head wants to kind of hit on the oil pump. Alright guys, so we have a little deviation with this distributor because of this coming out of the Dodge engine, and this engine is a Plymouth engine, and it's a couple years newer. It's 4 years newer. So there's a couple things they changed on there, but what we've got to basically keep in mind is we've got to go off of where this timing slot is for the hold down bolt. So this is a slotted adjustable hole so that you can set your timing, advance, and retard. And then you're going to look at this tang on here, and then you're going to put that in there just like this, and you should stay in the 7 o'clock position, which we do. So that's good to go. We do need to put a gasket in here, but you can tell this is locked in because it won't move, and we're down flat against this pad on here, this boss on the engine block. So that's what you're looking for. And if this is off, it can only be off 180. So if your firing order is just backwards, you just pop this out, flip that around, and then you'll be pointing just the opposite way. All right, I'll get this big fat cork washer on here, and that's supposed to go into this. So, all right guys, so I wanted to go over the oil pressure relief valve, show you how that goes together. So here's this. I just cleaned this off. I'm going to paint it in place because once I wrench on it, it's going to scratch the paint up. So there's no point in painting it twice. And I've got touch up to do anyway. And then we're going to take this gasket over that, and then that spring goes in there, and the plunger has to face this way. So, and it's going to be under a little bit of pressure here, so it can make it a little challenging to get this thread started. But there we go. And if you want to see the book picture, I'll show you that here real quick so you can kind of see. Just for reference. And we're just going to go ahead and tighten this. Just snug. So that's in. That's one more thing down. And then I think we'll probably go to the oil or the water pump. Okay, and so that's one thing down. And I think next we'll go to the fuel pump and get that cleaned up and put in. In a previous video, I also mentioned that I have a new pipe for this that I made up because the one that we got with the motor, I don't think went to this engine, and it would not stay in. They're supposed to be kind of a light press fit, and it just kept falling out. I made up another one, and it seems to fit right. You should have to tap it down there with a mallet, but I'm not ready to install that yet because it'll be in our way for all of these fittings. All right guys, we are putting the pipe dope on, the threads on these. I don't want to show you every single stinking one, but this is what we're doing here. So these, so the coolant doesn't creep through the threads and up the shaft, because it will, and it will get all over the head and make a mess and rust things. So this is why we're doing this. So I just wanted to show you this one. And I'll do the rest of these off camera because, this isn't exactly thrilling. But there you go. Drop her in, start that thread. Maybe. And you can see these have been done. So on to the next three, and then we're going to go start tightening these up. And I did install the lifting eye. I think it'll be okay. I checked. There's a strut that goes from here to the air cleaner. I think it'll clear that just fine, and it bolts onto the air cleaner up higher, so shouldn't be in the way. Hopefully, I'm not screwing myself up here, but all right, we've got all these run down, and now we're ready to torque. So just checking a couple things here, like the carburetor linkage, make sure everything's good on that. I can't put the spring on until I've got that little strut that goes to the air cleaner on, because the hook for that throttle spring it's hooks on there. So I'll show you. So this bolts on here, and then that spring goes from this hole to here. And it sucks this whole thing forward, and then that's your closed position, so you've got a hard throttle stop right there. So we're not going to do that just now. I'm going to repaint these, and I'm going to go through and torque these now. Alright guys, so I didn't show this before, but here's your tightening sequence. I'm going to 65 foot-pounds right now. You can go 65 to 70. We will retorque these after we've heat cycled the engine. And keep in mind you need to put that pipe dope on there. We're going to have to do plenty of touch-ups on here too, so just pay attention to your order on here. What you're trying to do is essentially flatten the head from the center out so that you don't have a ripple in there. Alright guys, so as you can see, we've done quite a bit aside from tightening the head since I last showed you all this stuff. I just didn't think it was worth filming it, and just wanted to get her done. And the shop is a total mess now, so I've got to clean that up. But intake and exhaust manifolds are on, road tubes on, valve covers are on. I don't know if you can see in there. Oil pump's on, fuel pump's on and cleaned. Fuel pump line is on. All of this is torqued and tightened down. Hook is on, obviously. I've just got this pulley set here right now, but it's been repainted. What else did I not show you yet? The road tube, or not the road tube, but the oil fill pipe, or stanchion, whatever you want to call it, is just kind of lightly tapped in here just to make sure that it was going to secure down. I don't want to put this fully on until the generator's in, because this can interfere with it, and we had that problem last time. So everything's good to go. I need to do touch up on things like this freeze plug. I'll probably sand that by hand or something, and then the oil pressure relief valve and these bolts, and I've got to put in all these little fittings, so I'll probably do that next. And need to go find our dipstick and put the cap back in for the oil pan, because it's just sitting in here right now. This thing's a little screwed up, so I'm just going to repaint it and call it a day, but we're almost there. This thing's gonna tip backward on us. We're trying to get these dowel pins aligned first, and then we're gonna hurry and put this bolt in, which is not easy. So I'll try and support most of the weight until I can get this up on here. Sorry if I'm blocking your view, but it ain't easy being cheesy. It's like a road tube might be in the way. Pinchy pinchy. Okay. Okay. Yeah, once this gets all the weight in here with the clutch, this is going to be tipped down on a really nice angle to stab that in the car. So now we have enough thread in there so we're not going to fall off. So let's get these other bolts put in. All right, so we get the bell housing all bolted up. I'll do the touch up on the bolts later and just spray some primer on there and then overshoot them and make sure they're protected. Next, we're going to do the bell housing. So I'd like to see if we can lift this up a little bit higher. All right, guys, this is not fun. These are keyed a certain way, and this thing is one heavy SOB. So we're going to try and get this up in here. Okay. All right, see if I can move you guys for a second, because I can't see what I'm doing either. Try not to have this come down on my noggin here. This thing probably weighs, I would guess, 50 pounds.
Bench pressing here.
That's a lot of metal to be bench pressing above your head.
Yeah.
All right, let's see if we can do it this time. Ideally, I'd have this engine.
Have you got those nuts where you can grab them easily?
Nope. I can't push it all the way in either, because if I push it all the way in, you can't get the nuts on here.
Right.
So I've got to get it in and then move it around.
It's hitting.
Yep, I remember doing this before. It's just as much fun then. So the problem is I think it's catching these. Too. The only other point to grab on here is rotating.
Oh, you got it. You got it. Here.
Can't screw it on with gloves on.
Here. I can get a washer on.
That's the problem.
I got a nut on that one. Okay. Well, let's put it this way. I don't have a nut on it.
Yeah, you have to kind of like
Two
side finger it.
Yeah.
And then if you can get it to go,
Oh, careful.
then we can let it back itself off just a little. Okay. Now,
I don't have that on very good at all.
yeah. If you can slip that up on there, I can get another one on. Like I say, this is a real pain in the butt. All right. So, I'll rotate this motor a little bit. That should get us to a spot where we can get something on.
Lock washer.
I got one.
And get these nuts from behind you. Okay.
Okay guys, you're seeing what I'm seeing here. I'm gonna do the rest of this crap off camera, but look up in here. You gotta reach your hand up in there, thread all these on, and you can't have this all the way back. These gotta stay somewhat loose or you're gonna have too much thread sticking through and you never get it on there. So you gotta keep rotating the motor around, put them all on, and then go back and tighten them. So do the rest of that off camera, and I'll show you what's next when we get to the clutch. All right, we got the stand set up, and it's just pinned through now. I'll get some spacers put on here and bolt this up later, but it can't really go anywhere because it's pinned down, and then that stand is locked, so it can't expand. And I mean, this is going to be pretty stable. So I feel okay about that, and I've used this a number of times before this way, so I know what to expect from it. But now we can move this around, and I can get that clutch put in, and then we can come back and loosen that bell housing up while this is on the hook and indicate that bell housing so that it's concentric with the crankshaft center line. Okay, so I just wanted to give you guys an overview of this on how this tool works that I built. This is a distributor out of a Jeep Cherokee. And I just turned the body off on the lathe, and then I turned this section down, and I left it kind of tight so that I'd have to actually tap fit it into the fluid drive. So it doesn't hurt anything because it's not touching any bearing surface or anything, but it goes in there tightly. And then this will stay stationary and my dial indicator clamps on this end. So let me show you how that dial indicator sits on there. Essentially, what's happened is you've got this driven into the fluid drive, and then this dial indicator is touching the outside of that bell housing where it's machined in that circle where the transmission goes in. And this is staying stationary. You see how that can rotate, and then you just spin that around and compare. This last time I did this, I came up with 5 thousandths on either side, and that thing stayed in there so stable. And look at how easy that rotates. It's just beautiful. No effort. So this tool is going on the shelf. So we're gonna go to our marks right here and set one of these sides as a 0. And then we're gonna read our total run out, whichever side is in the positive. And actually, we're not bad. So we're only about 10 thousandths off. That's not bad at all. So what I'm gonna do is bump my highs in, and this one's obviously the low side, so we're gonna set the 0, and we're gonna try and split the difference. So if you want to see the full video on how to do this, I've got a full video. I'll leave the link in the description. You can go check that out. But it's basically what you're gonna do. Go back and forth, and you're gonna tap it with a mallet until you get this completely centered, top, bottom, side to side. All right, guys, we're all together here, and got the clutch and everything in. And I'll take this back out. I'm gonna have to tip you sideways to show you, but clutch is in, clutch tool's in. Let's go ahead and remove that real quick. And we got our battery and solenoid set up here. I don't know what the deal is, but it doesn't want to go off the key. I'll get the key in here, and when I turn it to the start position, it's energizing our trigger here, but it's not closing the contactors on the solenoid. So this solenoid has a little switch on the bottom, so you can bypass that. So we're just going to do it that way. And we got us a new battery. So with that being said, we're ready to try starting this beast. All right, ignition is on, and we're all hooked up here. Battery's on somewhat. Let's try it. Yeah, I'm going to hit it with a little starting fluid because it's taking a minute for that gas to get up here. Battery terminal's coming off here, probably not helping. Okay, I'm going to check and see if we're airlocked on this pump here. It shouldn't be, but we could be. So I'm going to disconnect this line real quick and see what we're getting out of there.
Put this fuel up on something.
I think we're going to try and set this on something so it's a little higher. Okay, so we're pouring this down the bowl vent on the carburetor. Okay, we are having a fuel pump issue. So, okay. Well, our fuel pump is finally pumping. It's dripping all over the ground. So let me fix that and I'll bring you back. Right, well, we had it running here for a minute and then we sprung a leak. So I'm gonna try tightening some fittings here. But that means we're getting oil up into the canister, to the filter. And so we know our gauge isn't lying to us or anything. yeah, hopefully I don't have to change this line again. I've made up 2 of these so far, and they're always a pain in the butt. They like to leak, but that looks like it's still leaking to me. Let's try it. Okay, we still got a leak at this oil fitting here, so I think we're going to end up changing this damn fitting here before it creates a huge mess. And it looks like our fuel pump is working now. I left the fuel level just a hair low in the bowl to see if we could get the level to come up, and it is, so it'll probably start up and run. I'm going to try it one more time for fear of having this oil everywhere. Okay, let's see if we can get this thing to run on its own for a minute, and then I'll shut her down and fix that oil. Okay, seems like our needle is stuck in the carburetor, so we're dripping a few things. We're gonna fix that, but she runs, she idles. It was running good till I started flooding it out. So minor issue, I'll take care of that, no problem. So we're gonna fix a few of these little issues with that float sticking and this oil leaking. That's par for the course with a brand new startup. So you always got to run through all the little snags. This is Reaper signing off on another one. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned for the install on this. I'm sure this video is getting a little long in the tooth, so we're going to cut it off here and let this engine cool off a little bit too, and get the radiator hooked up. I'll show you some more of this running when we get these problems solved. See you later.